Who are the best defenders in Rainbow Six Siege? In this video, I'm going to tell you who they are. Let's get right into it. Now, before we get into my list, quick disclaimer, when I'm making this list, I'm using a certain set of my own criteria. A couple of these criteria I said are ease of use, kit strength, overall utility, usefulness, and how necessary they are in a setup. Starting off with number 5 on my list for top defenders in Rainbow Six Siege, I'm going to give this prestigious award to one of the SAS operators, Mute. Now with Mute, the reason I put him here on this list is because of how good his signal disruptors are. They can do so many different things and will be useful on every defense. I might say this a ton in the video, in fact I probably will, but what you have to know is that intel is king in this game. And Mute can deny so much intel from attackers, as well as having some extra perks to his gadget when it comes to his breaching denial, countering Dokkaebi calls, stopping lion scans, and more. And don't forget, Mute also has a pretty desirable kit. He has Nitrocell, the SMG-11, and the choice between the best shotgun in the game and the MP5K. Mute is also very easy to play. You set your 4 Mute jammers down on different doorways, maybe a wall or two, and that's it. Now the only caveat to Mute is his primary weapon. The MP5K is a fine weapon, but not better than many of the other operators on this list. And his shotgun, I said it is the best, but for most people, shotgun isn't desirable to play. It can be kind of difficult to play, and it really restricts you from getting into decent range engagements. Now I can fix one of these issues for you. I made a guide to shotguns that I'll throw into the card above in the link in the description if you want to check that out. On to number 4, and on my list, I'm going to give it to the Italian operator Maestro. Now Maestro, when you talk about him, you have to talk about his Elda. The Elda is probably the best defender weapon in the game, period. An 80 round mag, high fire rate, low recoil, high damage, you really cannot go wrong with this weapon. And to think it used to have ACOG, scary times those were. If you're in a clutch situation, there is no other gun or operator you would want than Maestro. Now that I've explained the power of this Elda, let's talk about the second reason he's up here. That being his Maestro cams. He has 2 bulletproof, non-malleable cameras that can see through smoke and has a taser that can shoot utility or other players. These cameras are amazing, offering a very viable second option to Echo's yokais. And one of the underrated elements of these cameras is that it can deny intel. These cams can take out drones in one shot. Remember what I said, intel is king. If you can just shoot just a couple, you can completely starve the attackers of intel onto sight. Now we gotta talk about one small disadvantage with Maestro, that is he is a 1-speed, and he is an anchor, period. He doesn't have a flexible playstyle at all like some operators, which I think makes him less appealing to some players, and that's the reason that he's only at number 4. Now I said this in my last video, comment your list for the top 5 defenders. Yes, I said defenders, not attackers by the way, and if you could also like and subscribe while you're down there, it won't hurt you. Now number 3. And here on my list, I've got to give number 3 to Bandit. Now the reason I put Bandit here on this list is because of his overall package. His Bandit batteries, they are quite useful, especially if you plan on actively triggering a wall. Electrifying a wall is almost essential on many sites, so it's not like you won't use his utility well. So his utility is strong, and then you continue and see he offers even more. He gives you the MP7. Remember when I said Elda was probably the best weapon on defense? The only one that can really rival it is the MP7. It's just a very desirable gun. Bandit also has Nitrocell, which is always good to have. And Bandit is a 3-speed. Also Bandit is super flexible, set and forget utility and a great gun on a 3-speed. You could play Bandit on sight and actively trick, play him as a deep roamer, shallow roamer, anchor, whatever your team needs. The only disadvantage I see to Bandit is his batteries. If you're not actively tricking, Kaid's electric claw would be better to have. But I think with the rest of Bandit and what he offers, he is a more comfortable pick for most people. So now we're at number 2. And number 2 on my list is going to Jäger. Now yes, he has been nerfed a couple of times as of late. He isn't the roamer he once was. But still, he has almost everything you could possibly want. First is gadget, the active defense system. You absolutely need this gadget in almost every defense. Even with the introduction of Womai, Jäger still is the king when it comes to projectile protection. He has the ability to remove 6 throwables from the field to protect himself, other players, and other utilities. His ADS I would say is the strongest and most necessary gadget in the game. And one other overlooked part of his gadget is that you can place them all in the prep phase, and then you're free to roam. Being a 2-speed, he isn't the most effective roamer anymore, but he still manages pretty well. And the same for his 416 carbine, it still is a pretty decent weapon to use. But even after looking at all his nerfs, comparing Jäger to his only competition in Wamai, Jäger offers way more when it comes to primary gadget, and is as good as Wamai in every other aspect. So when it just comes to Jäger, he might not be the operator he once was, but you have to remember he brings utility like no one else in the game does, which is why he is still at the top of the defenders, save one. And that brings us to our number one operator that I believe is better than Jäger. And that number one operator on my list for the best defenders in Rainbow Six Siege goes to Valkyrie. Now Valkyrie, what makes her so good? When it comes to Valkyrie, you have to talk about her evil eyes. I said information is king in this video how many times? It still applies here. Valkyrie has these 3 small and throwable cameras that she can stick to almost any surface. With Valkyrie, you can always gain information. Just the fact that she can throw these cameras adds a whole new layer to her. You could throw one outside to gain info for a round out, you could throw one in the corner of sight to gain info on the planter, and you can just throw them in so many hidden locations that are very difficult for attackers to spot. And if the attackers aren't being spotted, they won't have a clue that you know exactly where they are. Valkyrie is also just super easy to use. I will say this, learning some Velcam spots would go a long way of course, but her ability to always gain info makes her almost a crotch operator to many. And yet another reason why people would gravitate towards Valkyrie is their flexibility. Once she throws her Velcams, near sight or not, she can play however she wants. Aggressive spawn peeker, anchor, deep roamer, anything. And that brings us to Valkyrie's kit. She has the MPX, a slower fire rate primer that has no recoil, so I mean just trade off. She has the Deagle, which is sick, and a Nitro Cell, on a 2-speed. I'd say an all around good kit for any playstyle. I'm not saying her kit is perfect, but personally, she has one that I would always be satisfied running. Just when it comes to Valkyrie, you have to remember her kit isn't really why you pick her. Her never-ending source of info in the Evil Eyes is why you pick her, and why she has one of the highest pick rates in Siege. And is why I think she is the best defender in Rainbow Six Siege. I did this in the last video. I gotta give out some quick honorable mentions. And the first one I'm going to be giving to Echo. Now he is extremely strong, don't get me wrong. He has invisible drone cameras that can disorientate enemies and stop plants. That's a bit much. The reason I didn't really put him on my list though is because I'd say he's a broken mechanic, and that is why you'll see him banned just a ton. He also has a very demanding playstyle that requires you sitting on your drone a lot. So honestly, he deserves a spot I'd say, but I'm just not giving it to him. Now second honorable mention, I'm gonna go with Smoke. Now I would say you can make a very valid argument to put him at least at number 5 instead of Mute, but I'm very much on the belief that the meta is very intel heavy, and while Smoke was a must pick not too long ago, it still is very strong. He just wouldn't be a pick over Mute in my opinion. But you're probably wondering of course why I didn't pick him over Bandit, because Bandit isn't intel at all either, but my picks are torn, right? I gave him honorable mention, that's good enough for me. He's a good operator, yeah, just feel free to play him over any of these top 5, honestly. Now, do you guys agree with my list? I was a little bit more torn and confused on this one compared to my attacker one, which if you haven't seen that, it'll be somewhere on your screen and in the description down below if you'd like to check that out. Side note, if you could please like and subscribe, it really does help. Thank you, and I'll see you guys next time.